You'll go to hell if you've lived in sin. So say your prayers, 'cause here comes Brin.
My name is Jacob Smith. The J is meant to be pronounced as a Y, but I have long given up on correcting people. My father is a blacksmith. My mother was what the ignorant call a witch, practicing herbalism and unorthodox glimcraft when she passed through the village. My father couldn't tame her and wouldn't have wanted to. He was happy to raise me and for us to spend time as a family only during the harvest season, when her caravan would pass through and she would play the part of the good wife for a while. I grew up around the forge, fascinated by metal and machines, seeing everything through the eyes my father gave me. Even glimcraft, to me, seems a science or engineering more than an art. And it is the ticking of gears, the hammering of anvils, and the flash of powder that excites me. The villagers say I'm lucky, a blessing conferred by my mother, but it often doesn't seem that way. I have, of late, finished my apprenticeship to my father, and I'm supposed to become a journeyman, learning from others. I have put off the end of my apprenticeship, feigned incompetence as long as possible, and I have put off the time of my journeymanship. I have no real wish to become a smith. The work I have in mind requires more coin and more knowledge than honest work will allow. Fortunately, perhaps, fate has intervened and opened another path to me, that of an adventurer. I was awoken by shrill screaming. Starting awake, I stumbled out of the smith's cottage and out into the village square to see what the fuss was. Alwyn, a fellow artisan, was hysterical. It seems that her daughter Brin, a fine but headstrong girl, had been taken by something scurrying out of the night's darkness. The watch hadn't seen a thing, but the consensus amongst the villagers was that some fell beast had emerged from the undergrade and taken her from our midst. This was my chance to prove that another path was possible. I took my gear and I did my best to track the beast. Fortunately, it seemed to be dragging young Brin, and the scuff marks on the ground were somewhat obvious, even by torchlight. With the wind flickering the flame, I managed to track the thing into the icy hills that surround our pleasant little valley, and soon enough I found the pit the thing had crawled from. In the hills against the side was a shallow bowl, and in the bowl a rocky wall, and in that wall an opening. It looked like an old mine entrance or something similar perhaps, very old, very worn. Any worked stone had been taken away from the outside for walls long ago. Sundered wooden planks of ancient vintage lay about, old, rotten, but looking at them, freshly splintered. Once they'd been used to close off this narrow cave, but not anymore, and the drag marks led inside. It was a tight fit, and inside the rough rock turned to better hewn stone and a floor of flagstones. This was no mere scrape or mine. It was something fashioned and built long ago perhaps, but by the hands of men, or man-like things. I could hear the sound of water within, despite the freezing cold outside. Perhaps a spring here, warmed by the earth, made this place a well, perhaps a holy one, once. There was an icy pool of water, rimed with frost, blocking the path onward. I leapt across it, clean to the other side, landing solid on booted feet, and I was quite proud of myself for making it. Beyond the pool was an old, frozen gate, iron, crusted with rust, frozen to the floor from the damp air. I chipped away at the ice with my dagger until the gate was free, and then it was simple enough to lift it, shift it, and wedge it in place with some of the shards of frozen ice. At the end of the passage there was a void, dropping straight down. Hanging and swaying was an old and rickety-looking hoist by which one could raise or lower oneself. I didn't trust the look of it, but there was little choice. And strangely, on the other side of this well, of this pit, of this void, the passage seemed to continue. This didn't make much sense to me, and nor did the existence of this hoist. It was newer than the tunnels, but old in itself, rusty, rotting and untrustworthy. I gingerly made my way onto it, and it creaked and groaned ominously. Carefully, I managed to give the ancient ropes and pulleys and chains a tug, but as I did, ice broke free above and rained down on me. Sharp icicles that battered my head and shoulders and left me reeling with a deep cut upon my cheek. The falling ice also damaged the hoist. I was fortunate that I did not plummet to my doom, but there was no longer any way to lower myself. The only way down now would be my rope. I tied it off to some broken masonry and threw the end down the well shaft, past the broken hoist. But before I went any lower, I decided to try the other half of the passage. A short distance back, this ended in an ancient wooden door, bound with brass, locked with an old-fashioned lock. It was child's play to pick it, but more fun than just breaking it. But the door was so swollen in its frame that it took a shoulder barge from me to open, even after I picked the lock. Of course, that meant another avalanche of ice and rock, but this time I was able to spring forward past the ice, slush and stone that rained down. I sprawled on the floor just past it, once bitten, twice shy. At the end of the passage, after that little problem, my torch revealed a room with a grand statue in its very centre, 20 feet tall, ominous and imposing, though I told myself that was just my imagination. More importantly, this room had stairs leading down, perhaps a safer way of getting to the bottom of the pit without dangling off a rope above God knows what. I took another step forward, and that revealed that the ominous nature of the statue was not merely my imagination. The huge thing moved, with a sound like a file scraping metal, slamming its arm down, barring me from the stairs. On reflex, I raised my pistol, and I shot. There was a flare of light from the frizzen and then the barrel, and a deafening bang that rang the walls like a bell. The half-inch ball struck the thing full in the face, flaking stone and ricocheting off as the echo of the blast deafened me. It had no effect, and discretion being the better part of valour, I retreated back down the tunnel, slipping and sliding in my haste. The thing did not follow me further than the door, so I was safe, at least for now, but for getting down, that just left the rope. About halfway down the well, I saw a second opening. Whatever the stairs above beyond that infernal statue had probably led down to. I was searching for a child, so it behoved me to inspect everything, everywhere, to try and find her. I swung myself into the corridor and, after reloading my pistol and taking stock, began my slow, wary advance. Thick webbing lined this corridor, but it curled away at the flames of my torch or snapped easily with a stroke of my dagger. Some of the villagers had suspected a cryptid, a gigantic spider, a thing I'd only ever read about. They thought maybe that had been responsible for Brin's abduction, so this was maybe the right trail? Lost in thought, I did not notice the ceiling that it lifted opened up into a void, nor did I notice the pair of gigantic spiders lurking above. I hadn't thought to look up until it was too late. They dropped. They fell on me. I felt the sharp bite of fangs, and then nothingness. Waking up surprised me. Being as numb and groggy and cocooned in webbing as I wasn't quite so surprising. Hanging upside down wasn't particularly surprising either. but I was alive. Lucky, you see, just questionably lucky. They'd decided to eat me later, apparently. I was quite the meal, I'm sure. My lost torch was guttering away on the floor below me, so it can't have been that long since I was bit. But the damn torch was nearly out. I didn't have long to act. It took some time, but I managed to work a hand free and to use my dagger to slit open the cocoon. Slowly, bit by bit, I edged my way back down into the dungeon corridor below, using the webs, moving a little at a time until I reached the corridor again. Then I sprinkled powder all over the web nearby. Then I held my gun up to it and struck the hammer against the striker. Sparks hit the powder and ignited it. Unconfined, it didn't explode, but it burnt, and there was a blinding flare, and in an instant, flames leapt. The webs curled back, carrying the flame in all directions from where I'd ignited it. The creatures shrieked and clattered their mouthparts, but like most beasts, they're afraid of fire, and scurried away, vanishing into the depths, pursued by the flame as it tore through their home. I lit a new torch from the last remnants of the old, and slumped, tending my wounds as best I could, taking a moment to drink some water and settle my stomach with hard bread and soft cheese. An hour passed before I knew it, but the poison began to wear off, so I pushed on, past the delicate ash that had once been a citadel of webbing, and as above, so below. Another square chamber, no statue this time, the statue replaced with a column of stone, faintly glowing and graven with ancient runes whose meaning escaped me. The poison from the spiders was still affecting me, moving, making me sluggish, causing moments of weakness and dizziness and nausea, and the sickly glow of the ancient magics seemed to make it worse, so I pressed on, finding the same staircase ascending and descending. I all but tripped over a loose flagstone on the way. Mismatched luck again, you see, as under it I found a stash of gold and trinkets, perhaps hidden here as protection against some ancient tax. It made little sense to me, but there's no use questioning one's fortunes. Down the ancient stairs this seemed to be the bottom, and there I found Brin, poisoned with the same foul toxin that I had been. But she was smaller, younger, worse affected, practically delirious. The chamber she'd found to hide in was some ancient tomb, and now, perhaps, the traps and the guardian made more sense at least. I had more sense than to try and rob the tomb of anyone who lavished coin on such defences. So, rather, I took Brin into the stairwell, halfway between the two floors, and there I gave her water, some of my own meagre rations, until she seemed somewhat more fit and alert, able at least to tell me of how she'd been snatched by the spider, of waking in the nest as I had, of wriggling free but being too afraid and too sick to dare the spiders a second time. Now, though, between us and freedom stood only the statue, and if we ascended the stairs we would be behind it. So, slowly, carefully, we picked our way back up the stairs all the way to the top, conserving our energy, a few steps at a time, and when my torchlight revealed the back of the statue, we took a moment, and then sprinted, hell for leather, past the thing with its great stone fist smashing down behind us. We scrambled down the corridor, leapt across the rickety joist, past the icy pool, and out into the cold, starry night. The icy air finally seemed to lift that leadenness in my limbs from the spider bite. I returned Brin to her grateful mother, but I didn't stop for the celebrations and the congratulations of my fellow villagers. I took planks from the new barn, borrowed a cart. Nobody asked any questions in this moment. With my father's tools, I boarded up that hell pit once more, and for good measure, I used some of my powder to bring the stone down around the entrance. Nothing is getting out of there anytime soon, but for me, it's time to get out of the village. I survived. I can do it. I can make a better life than decades of horseshoes. And now is my opportunity.
The Shadow World is an homage to 90s goth culture, goth punk games, and the interminable pettiness of the LARP scene. Bloodsucker, Chav, and WizKid thrust you into a world of teen drama, occult shenanigans, and comedically weak supernatural powers. You know it's good, because RPGNet accused it of classism. Available at post-morp.com, lulu.com, and drive-thru RPG.
I don't wanna